Hello anyone and everyone, I'm Samuel Vine, back with another build guide for Guild Wars 2. This time it's the Warrior Elite spec, the Spellbreaker, from the Path of Fire expansion. To start, I want to clarify what my goal is when creating a new build. It seems there was some confusion previously about what exactly my builds are supposed to do. I cannot stress enough that I do not make raid guides. I do not make builds for raids, strikes, or other endgame group content. That is not what I do in-game, so I can't make that kind of content. If you're looking for raid builds or the like, I suggest you check out other content creators like Mighty Teapot, Nike, Valen, or Gilgen. What I want to do is create builds for players with lower to moderate skill levels so that they can start soloing harder PvE content like champions or low-level fractals. You see, players with moderate skill are still going to be making mistakes during combat, and probably quite a lot of them. My goal is to create builds that let these players recover from mistakes easily. These builds will not be topping damage meters, and they're not supposed to. Instead, I want to give as much room for error that I can so players practice without getting frustrated by constantly dying because they're using advanced raid builds that assume they're already an expert at the game. This is why I'll be calling these guides builds with training wheels, and I hope they give players the opportunity to practice being solo in combat and eventually graduate to the more advanced, less cushioned builds. So, with all that said and done, let's get into the build. Like I said, this is the Power Spellbreaker, and I am using a dagger with a rifle swap for just in case I need ranged. My heal skill is the Healing Signet, which passively regenerates my health every second. And the trick is to never use your heal skill. Never press it. You will actually lose a lot of your passive healing if you start pressing the Signet when you think you need it. Next up is the Shout skill for Great Justice. This gives 25% crit chance with Fury and 6 might stacks each time that you use this skill, which the 6 might stacks will be important later, so remember that. And this is an ammunition skill, so you can use it twice with just a couple seconds in between. Then I have the Stance Stun Break skill, Endure Pain. This says take no damage from attacks. You are still susceptible to conditions and control effects. So this, what it says, when it says take no damage from attacks, that means power damage. And then I go to Balance Stance as a second stun break. That'll give me some extra stability and swiftness, but crucially become immune to critical hits. Those are, of course, the hits that you get by using your precision and ferocity stats. Lastly, I have Signet of Rage as my elite skill, which passively grants some adrenaline in combat, and if I press it, I gain Fury, 5 stacks of Might, and Swiftness. Again, the 5 stacks of Might is important, and what is also important is that Signet of Rage is only a 60-second cooldown, and I'll get into why when I get to the traits. First up, though, is the equipment. I am wearing full Assassin's armor with a Rune of the Pack, which gives power, boon duration, precision, and every 30 seconds will give myself and nearby allies 5 stacks of might, fury, and swiftness for 8 seconds. Again, 5 stacks of might, that is very important to remember. You'll start to notice the pattern that I want a lot of these modifiers that give multiple stacks of might at a time. Then my weapons are Valkyrie's daggers with a Sigil of Accuracy and a Sigil of Blood. Sigil of Blood, steal a foe's health on landing a critical hit. and then Superior Sigil of Accuracy, 7% crit chance. Now, if you want to, you can change these two daggers to be Berserker stats, and then roughly swap out the Sigil of Accuracy for something else, like, say, maybe the Sigil of Strength. That'll give Might every time that you score a critical hit. That is totally an option. I already had these, and so I didn't really feel the need to change them. And you'll notice that my crit chance is already 73.33, which means when I get Fury, I'm at 98.33%, which will be higher when I eventually get Assassin's Armor. So I'll essentially already be at 100% crit chance. So it's up to you how you want to work the daggers, but this is what I'm doing, and it works great for me. Then I have a Dragon Stat Rifle on swap. The stat isn't really important since you'll only be using it in emergency situations. And you can use Force and Accuracy like I'm using, or you can use stat swapping sigil, or swap sigils like, say, Sigil of Cleansing and Sigil of Energy. Those would work nicely on this as well. My backpack is Berserkers. My two earrings, the accessories, are Assassins. And my two rings are Marauders, with my amulet being Assassins. So as you can see, I got a bit of a mix, but my crucial goal is to get to roughly 75% crit chance. And it's just a little bonus that I have some extra health. Okay, so that's the equipment, and so now we'll go on to the traits, which will be very important to keep track of because there are a few of these that are integral to this build, and you cannot change them. So first we're taking the Defense, Strength, and Spellbreaker trait lines. The minors in Defense, two of them are very important, one is not. Thick Skin, gain protection when you use a healing skill. This is inconsequential because you're never using your heal skill. Adrenal Health, this is important. This is one of the main reasons why I took the defense trait line. Is I gain health based on adrenaline spent. So every time that I use either Breaching Strike or Full Counter, I gain some health back. It won't be the maximum health that you would get like with a Berserker or a Bladesworn, but it still adds up. Next is the other main reason that I take the defense trait line. Lesser Endure Pain. Take no damage from attacks, still susceptible to controls and conditions, and you cast this every time you use an elite skill, which is on a 60-second cooldown and then gives you Fury, Might, and Swiftness. So then that means your Signet, in addition to doing its effects, will also make you immune to power damage for 4 seconds. Next we have Hardened Armor, gain resolution when you block or are struck by a critical hit. You really only have one block, and that is Full Counter, but it's available every 8 seconds. So, and then also you'll get resolution when you're critically hit, which can happen pretty regularly. Strike damage is reduced, or strike damage taken, is reduced by a percentage, by 10%, while you have resolution. So that just makes you tankier. Every time you block or get critically hit, you'll start taking less and less damage. Lastly, we have Cleansing Ire. Gain adrenaline when hit. This just is a passive increase to adrenaline. It's nice, but it's not the reason. Remove a condition when you hit with a burst skill. Then remove an additional condition for every bar of adrenaline spent. Now, as a Spellbreaker, you only spend 1 bar at a time. So you can cleanse 1 condition when you hit, but then you'll also be cleansing 1 condition just because you activated your burst skill or Full Counter. But it'll only remove 1 condition unless it hits a target. Next, we have the Strength trait line. Strength, we have Reckless Impact, which damages foes when you dodge roll. It's almost 1,000 hit damage per dodge roll. And then for every target that gets hit by this dodge roll, you gain might, which if you're fighting in a large group, say in a Fractal, that can add up to a lot of might really fast. And we'll get to why the might is important at the end of this strength trait line. But next up, we have Brave Stride. Movement skills grant stability when used, and your movement skills are your Dagger 2, Aura Slicer, and your Dagger Burst skill, Breaching Strike. So those are two ways that you will get stability, and you will also get stability from Balance Stance. Now, you do have 2 stun breaks, so it might seem a little redundant to get so much stability, but the thing is you'll be using both of these stun breaks pretty much not as stun breaks. Pretty much you'll want to use them off cooldown to reduce the amount of damage that you are taking in difficult content like Fractals. So you may or may not have your stun breaks available when you need them, so having as much stability as you can get is very handy for keeping yourself from not getting stunned. So next is burst skills restore endurance on hit, and I gain about a quarter of a bar every time that I use a burst skill, which if you remember, dodging does an attack and gives you might. So every time you use a burst skill, you'll be able to dodge more frequently and use more dodge attacks. Next is Forceful Greatsword. We're not wielding a greatsword, but the other half of this trait is what is important. Gain power, nice, and a chance to gain might on critical strike. So it's a 50% chance of getting might, 1 stack of might, on a critical hit. And you will be critting a lot, because with Fury you're at over 98% crit chance. So a 50-50 shot to get more might is amazing, and we'll get to that in 2 more traits. Pinnacle Strength. Might applied to you gives more power, 10 extra points, and your critical hit chance is increased by 5%. Very nice. But here's the kicker. Might makes right. Gain health and endurance whenever you apply might to yourself. Endurance gives you more dodges, and 133 healing every stack. So every time you get you get a might stack, you will heal that amount for each portion of the might that you get. So that's why I was so keen on using For Great Justice with 6 might stacks and Signet of Rage for 5. Because that is 11 stacks of might right there, which is over 1,000 something healing. I'm bad at math, so whatever. That's just from those 2 skills. That's not counting for the might that you get from dodging or from Forceful Greatsword, or from the pack runes. So you will be passively healing a lot every time you get might, and every second because of your healing signet that you're never supposed to use. So next up we have Spellbreaker. Obvious, since this is a Spellbreaker build. I am going to assume that you know the basics of how Spellbreaker works. In short, you have full counter and a 1 bar use of a burst skill. This is not like Core Warrior or the other versions of Warrior where you can build up your adrenaline to all 3 bars and you then use your burst skill. You use 1 burst skill or 1 burst bar at a time, but you have 2 bursts. Then I have Dispelling. First is Pure Strike. Deal increased critical hit damage. This is doubled against boonless foes. Now, how do you remove boons? Your burst skills will remove boons. Next we have Sun and Moon Style. Gain bonuses for each dagger you equip. The main hand, Strike damage is increased versus foes with no boons. Offhand, you heal for a percent of your outgoing critical damage. So you're healing a lot from this skill as well as all of the might stacks and your healing signet because you have 98% crit chance. So you are healing a lot. Then we have Attacker's Insight. Gain insight when disabling foes or removing boons. Full Counter refreshes all burst skills on hit. So that means if you have your Breaching Strike on cooldown, then you hit a target with Full Counter, your Breaching Strike comes off of cooldown right away. And again, your Breaching Strike will remove boons. And then lastly, I'm pretty sure anyone who plays Spellbreaker saw this coming. Magebane Tether is the last important skill. Tether yourself to your target whenever you use a burst skill. It creates a tether that gives you might and increases your outgoing damage to that target. And it also says that it can be a CC when they go out of range. That is just, since you are using your burst skill all the time, like off cooldown, this is a lot of extra might, so a lot of other applications of self-healing. And as I said at the very beginning, I want builds that have a lot of cushion, a lot of recovery from mistakes, and this build definitely has that. Next up, you'll actually be watching my playthrough of the Molten Boss Tier 1 Fractal solo. I'm not very good at fractals. I'm a moderately skilled player at best, and I'm not accustomed to this kind of content. I usually just do open world. But lately I've started branching into solo tier 1 fractals a little bit, and you'll see me make a lot of mistakes in the video, but you'll also notice that I'm able to recover from those mistakes and not ever die. That is why I like this build, is I can recover. And I really hope that you all enjoy the next segment, and thank you very much for watching. This has been Samuel Vine. Take care.